Did you know that when you grab your camera to go out and take some pictures, you have certain legal rights and responsibilities? What are they? Well, you know, there's a variety of books out on the market right now that discuss those guidelines. Here's one, Photography, What's the Law? It was written by an attorney. His name is Robert M Cavallo. I could stand here and read you the book. I won't. But why don't we go and talk to Bob about just that, photography and the law? What should an amateur photographer think of when they grab the old camera off the closet shelf? And let's talk in legal terms here.
Okay. There are really three things you should think about when you pick up a camera and set the shot. A, can I really take the photograph? Am I going to become legally liable? B, if I can take the photograph, do I own it? If I own it, can I use it? Those are the three areas that you must think about. Strangely enough, in the law, there are certain times you cannot even take the photograph. For example, if the Department of Defense has indicated that certain military installations or military equipment are confidential, the mere taking of the photograph alone would constitute a crime, and it would be, snap the shutter and off to San Quentin. So that you have to be very careful of. In addition, things such as money. The mere photographing of money and using it for commercial purposes may be a crime. People say, why? Quite simple. How does a counterfeiter make a plate? If you're able to take a good 35mm shot of a $100 bill, you can make an engraving plate from it. So therefore, there have been limitations put on the taking of money, photographing of money, and there are certain constraints. If you distort the money, by that reduce it in size or crumple it, or do any other thing to distort it, you can do that. You can shoot the photograph and utilize it even for commercial purposes. If, however, you do intend to use it for commercial purposes without distorting it, then you must consult the Secretary of the Treasury. Lots of folks are aware of the fact that when they go to a theater, there'll be a sign posted, or there'll be an announcement which says you cannot take photographs in this establishment. If the establishment is in fact private property, the owner of the private property has a right to say what you can and cannot do on that private property, even though you're paying an admission fee. And if you go to a museum, for example, there'll be a sign posted which will say you cannot photograph. You must adhere to that, because if you don't, you are then violating the rules of your entry. You're a trespasser. You can be evicted. So these are the things that an amateur must be concerned about, even simple little things as to the use of equipment. For example, there's a statute here in the city of New York that if you intend to shoot photographs in Central Park, if part of your photographing session is to utilize a tripod, you must get a permit. What is the rationale to that? It's a well-traveled thoroughfare. Tripods, such as cameras being set up on them, can cause a nuisance, people tripping over them, therefore you require a permit. In addition, can you go out in the midst of traffic and stop it and photograph the building? The answer is no. Why? Because you are stopping the flow of traffic. You require a permit. So there are times that you cannot even take the photograph without a permit. There are times that you cannot take the photograph without possibly opening yourself up to liability.
Let's just say, as an example, that there's a parade in town. You've got your camera and you're taking some pictures, and you happen to come across a wonderful photograph and you'd like to sell it to a national magazine or a local paper. So you do, and then the folks that have appeared playing the bass drum in the parade, they say, hey, I want to be paid for that. Right. Can they demand that money?
Okay. The answer is yes, no, and maybe, and that's not to equivocate. There's a simple guideline. If the photograph is in fact sold for editorial purposes rather than advertising purposes, they are not entitled to be paid. Now, an editorial purpose simply means this. If you're utilizing the photograph in a magazine or in a newspaper or in any other medium without endorsing a product or a service, no release is required and no payment is required to the subjects.
Bob, in general, why is a release required?
If you intend to use a photograph for commercial purposes, and by that I simply mean the endorsement of a product or a service or in connection with a piece of fiction, not fact, but fiction, you are required under the laws of the state of New York and probably every other state throughout the Union, whether it's in a statute or by court-operated law, to have the release from the subject in order to permit you to use that particular photograph. If you do not, you'll be subject to liability and you will be sued.
If you're an amateur photographer looking for that big break and you think you found it in a photo contest, Bob Cavallo has a few words of warning that may come as a surprise.
And this has been a sore point with me for a number of years. Now, I'm not talking about reputable institutions running photo contests. Usually we have no problems with them. Where we do have problems are in the area of bogus photo contests, wherein they ask amateurs from all over the country to send in their photographs, be judged, and then they'll win a can opener or $300. And part of the contest rules would normally be, we will retain the photographs and all rights to that photograph. Now, if you can conjure up in the world of commercial photography the fact that if there exists a repository of 15 or 20,000 photographs taken all over the world by amateurs, and by merely calling it a photo contest, you are now the owner of those particular photographs to sell them and use them in any way you see fit and make commercial profit from it, what you have is no more than a scam for building up a commercial photo library without payment, and that bothers me.
So you've taken that great photograph, and you might want to do something with it. Publish it, sell it, or even enter it into a photo contest. Well, you've already gotten all your photographic angles covered, but be sure you've got your legal angles covered as well.